So we got a question from our friend Orlando who's wondering if it's a necessity to compete in jiu-jitsu tournaments to be good at jiu-jitsu. So Orlando, thanks for the question, brother. And I'm going to assume two things from this question. One, that you're newer to jiu-jitsu and that you're maybe looking at competitions as, sort of weigh out the pros and the cons, and you're wondering if you need to do them or if you have to do them. And I'm also going to assume that, because good's kind of an ambiguous word when we use it for jiu-jitsu, right? Good at what? Teaching, rolling, running a gym for other people to come in and train. There's a lot of facets to jiu-jitsu. So I'm going to assume that you mean good as in I can use my jiu-jitsu against you better than you can use yours against me, and I can beat you during rolling or competitions or whatever. So with that said, is it necessary to compete in jiu-jitsu competitions to be good at jiu-jitsu? No. Right? It's not a necessity. Necessity means have to. You don't have to compete to be good at jiu-jitsu and to learn jiu-jitsu. You don't have to. It's simply a facet or a part of the whole, right? I mean, it's one chunk of jiu-jitsu. When you do jiu-jitsu competitions, you're not doing jiu-jitsu just to do competitions. You're doing competitions as sort of a greater part of your jiu-jitsu training, right? It's just one part of it. Now, I know where you're coming from, because jiu-jitsu competitions are so exciting and they grab us and they pull our attention. And so it's really easy to get sucked into them. And I know that when I first started, that's all I really cared about. I wanted to compete in competitions early on. And in the beginning, I wrongly assumed what you're thinking too, which is basically you have to compete. You just have to, right, in order to be good. And that's what I thought. Now, over the years, I've been training since 2003, and I've understood that that's maybe not the case, because one, I've rolled with people that were some of the toughest rolls that I've ever had, and they were not competitors, and they didn't compete often in some cases. So sometimes some of the best teachers that I've ever had, that I've ever been exposed to, were not competitors themselves. They would train other people to compete, but they weren't competitors themselves, or they didn't compete often. And so again, that kind of woke my eyes up to, like, you don't have to. This is a path that you can take on if you want to, but you don't have to do it if you don't want to, or you don't think it's valuable to you. Now, that said, again, I'm taking this question as that you're new to jiu-jitsu and you're maybe thinking about competing. And so I'm going to throw out, just off the top of my head, I'm going to miss some, I'm sure, and maybe I'll just do another video at some point. But I'm going to throw out some of the valuable parts that you can get from competitions that might help you with your jiu-jitsu and help make you better at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So one is that it can help tap you into an intensity that you didn't know existed. What I mean by this is some people come ready-made out of the box. As soon as they walk in the gym, they can automatically turn it on, right, as far as being intense. Some people can't, right? Some people just haven't tapped into that yet. And I think that everybody has a level of intensity that they can reach, but I think a lot of times people have to tap into that intensity because it's there, it's dormant sometimes, right? Because it's not like you're being super intense in your daily life physically like this, right? Like for most people, Adam recently got his black belt promotion, and he was talking about during it, because he works in like a desk job and stuff. He's like, it's a chance for me to exercise my warrior energy on a daily basis with other people, and as we get to tap into something that we don't get to tap into on a daily basis, and for the most part. And so what happens is people will go to competitions, and if they're not used to being intense, they go to the competitions and they run into that, because when you're rolling with all that stress and you have another human being that doesn't know who you are and they want to rip your head off, that's intense. And afterwards, I've seen this happen plenty of times where you have a student who's not the most intense person or not the grittiest person. They go to a competition, they come back, and they're like different. They changed. They came back more gritty, more intense, and they're able to tap into it because they felt it and they can get back there again. So that's one benefit. Another is this, that you get out of your comfort zone, right? Because again, when you train, a lot of times you get used to the rhythms of your training partners. You get used to the training days, right? That becomes rhythmic. You get used to all the different parts of your training. And so it can become very rhythmic and almost routine. Not a bad thing. And you can always change up different aspects of your training by simply trying new moves, or if your partner tries a new move, different rolling time periods. There's tons of ways to shake up the training, but sometimes your training can become very routine and rhythmic. And when you go to a tournament, that basically gets thrown out the window, because you run right into just pure uncomfort. And sometimes, because you might walk into a competition, you might have thought that your match was supposed to be at 2, and instead they started running the match at 1, and you got to scramble to get your gi on real quick, and you just got to jump on the mat. Right? Or maybe it's running late and you're getting frustrated and you're like waiting for it. And like, I've had that happen before. I've had that happen plenty of times where you gets in my head because I'm waiting for it, right? And you have to keep yourself together. Or maybe you go to the match and you normally have these techniques that work really well, but then you roll against someone and they don't work at all, right? And now you get ripped out of your normal game and you have to play outside of that comfort that you're used to. And sometimes it doesn't work. And you're left with basically the seeds for potential success, right? I say that because potential success, because it doesn't mean you're going to be successful, right? It doesn't mean you're going to get better. It's up to you at that point to take those seeds, plant them, and then grow them to turn them into something, right? Because I know that, again, I've talked about this before in other videos where I had an issue with triangle chokes. I used to get triangle choked all the time, and instead of like addressing the issue, I just kind of ignored it. And it wasn't until one of my coaches basically stuck me in a triangle choke position for a month of training that I got over it, and that I really found the value in facing down those uncomfortable areas head on. And then with that, I think in a lot of cases, people that compete will sometimes get better faster, right? Again, because it's sort of, I think there's a few parts to it, but one part is that they're getting ready for something. And anytime you have a big goal coming up or something that you know you have to get ready for, because nobody wants to get out there and look like an idiot when they compete. And then at the same time, you know, you're going out there to try to win, I assume. So you start preparing yourself and you push yourself really hard, right? And so you do all that. And then on top of that, once you compete, after it's over, you typically learn so much about your game and you know, different aspects of it, and then you're left there with all these little like pieces where you can say, okay, well, what do I want to do with these? Well, I'm lacking this area of my game. This area is perfect. This is actually I did really well with this, and so you can get some really good feedback on your game that you can use for your training and further growth. And so a lot of times I see that people that compete routinely and regularly, I'm not going to say like once every now and then, you don't really get this, but when you're competing regularly, you get so much feedback from your game to sort of see how it's working, and you can do sort of test and retest and then sort of tweak it a little bit that I see these people get better faster. So I think I'm going to cut the video there because, again, I could go on the subject for a long time. But again, the basic idea is no, it's not a necessity to compete, but there are some valuable things that it can give you in your for your jiu-jitsu. Again, those are just a couple. I brushed over so many other benefits. But Orlando, I hope the video helps, brother, and thank you for the question.